All right, diving back into the art of war. It is March 13th, and we just talked about the five dangerous faults. And I think we're just going to reiterate it. So we talked about those on Monday. We're in chapter 8, which is variation in tactics. I think this is the last two of the chapter before we're moving on. Verse 13. These are the five besetting sins of a general, ruinous to the conduct of war. Again, they're recklessness, cowardness, a hasty temper, a delicacy of honor, and over solicitude for his men. Last verse. When an army is overthrown and its leader slain, the cause will surely be found among these five dangerous faults. Let them be subject of meditation. So I think that's probably a good one to keep in mind, because while a lot of the Stoic virtues that we are looking into tend to focus on benevolence and being good and being virtuous to others and self, it is pointed out here the dangers of the opposite, and being aware of that. And of course, I mean, a lot of Stoicism does warn against, you know, things like the seven deadly sins, laziness and avarice and things like that. But anyway, let's dive into the alternate translation, wrapping it out with Chin Hao. Master Sun says these five things are faults in generals, disaster for military operations. In the alternate translation, the five traits that are dangerous in generals are: those who are ready to die can be killed, those who are intent on living can be captured, those who are quick to anger can be shamed, those who are puritanical can be disgraced, those who love people can be troubled. And so, just reminding on that, the difference in the breakdown in the translation. One is a little bit more cut and dry. This one's a little bit intuitive. My alarm went off. It's time to keep an eye on the markets. Master Sun says these five things are faults in generals, disaster for military operations. To which Chin Hao, these go unedited. There's no preparation. I dive in whenever I can. Good generals are otherwise. They are not committed to death, yet do not expect to live. They act in accord with events, not quick to anger, not subject to embarrassment. When they see possibility, they are like tigers. Otherwise, they shut their doors. Their action and inaction are matters of strategy, and they cannot be pleased or angered. Maneuvering armies and adaptations. Moving on to maneuvering armies next. Let's dive into the art of war and find out, I mean, the Daily Stoic, and find out what versions of Eastern philosophy we can bring to today and what kind of reflections we can make from it. March 13th, out of the Daily Stoic. One day it will all make sense, by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. Whenever you find yourself blaming Providence, turn it around in your mind and you will see that what has happened is in keeping with reason. Picticus Discourses 3.17.1. Part of the reason we fight against the things that happens is that we're so focused on our plan that we forget that there might be a bigger plan that we don't know about. So I just wrote a blog post about this interesting book that I'm reading called Seeking Wisdom. This is not planned. See, I love it. This is why these are so fantastic. And so in here, we're talking about Charlie Munger, and his. This is in 7 of. Okay, let me just go back to the very beginning, because this is like Buffett replying to some things that Munger talks about. Okay, the psychology of misjudgments, and I've made it to number 7. Misjudgments explained by psychology. Let's go over. There are 28 reasons here, and I'm just going to go up to 7, which is where I'm at. Number 1, bias from mere association. 2, underestimating the power of rewards and punishment. 3, underestimating bias from own self-interest and incentive. So just kind of like what we're talking about in the Stoic. Self-serving bias, overly positive view of our abilities and future, includes over-optimism. In fact, as we speak, I short-sold Microsoft and it has gone up so much. I've lost so much, and I'm overly optimistic that it'll come back down. That may never happen. And this is exactly what it's talking about. Yet I'm like so ingrained in my hope and my emotion of it that I'm throwing the logic out the window and have chose to do so iteration and iteration and iteration again. And so obviously this is either going to be a really expensive lesson or a test in patience. I found both can work. So I'm kind of falling back on some older strategies that I've observed in market fluctuations and patterns to try to make this play happen, because on a daily, hourly, weekly, monthly basis, after you sit here and watch them for so long and you've been doing it for so many years, you do see certain patterns and trends and head and shoulders and the wave skip patterns, what I call it. And just there's the patterns all start to be repetitive. And that is one of the scariest and greatest things about the time and technological age that we live in. Um, but I just wrote about number 7. There's bias from consistency tendency and bias from deprival syndrome. So there's the exact bias from the consistency tendency, being consistent with our prior commitments and ideas, even when acting against our best interest or in the face of disconfirming evidence. Includes confirmation bias, looking for evidence that confirms our actions and beliefs and ignoring or distorting disconfirming evidence. And then bias from deprival syndrome, strongly reacting when something we like and have is taken away or lost, includes desiring and value more what we can't have or what is less available or threatens to be less available. And so the deprival syndrome, where the author talks about we dislike losing the things we have more than appreciate gaining the things we don't have. So that's why a lot of people, I think, number 1, are stuck where they're at in life. But number 2, um, it did comment on just people in general. And so that also kind of falls back to the art of war and commanding your troops. But also, you have to be willing to die, as they just said. So the general, so like if you're a portfolio manager and your stocks or your army, you have to be able to sacrifice one and take the blood, right? The red, in order to reset and retrain a new soldier. And it's like that ruthless calculus of war that you have to have at least that mindset, because we don't live in times of war, but so much of everything is war. And like we learned from Sun Tzu, the whole point is to not go to war at all. And so by studying everything that we can anticipate most everything and get the most desired outcome. And so this new program I'm on has me going 20 minutes a day trading, win or lose. Yet the loss came, the money got taken away, visually, and now I'm holding on to that because I've seen, right, the success over and over to get to that point. And it's like I've had major wins, but also I have to like repeat to myself how many times I've lost more than this, and I'm still net ahead total over the years. So one day it will all make sense. Part of the reason we fight against the things that happen is that we're so focused on our plan that we forget that there might be a bigger plan that we don't know about. It is not the case that plenty of times something we thought was a disaster that it turned out to be, but the passage of time, a lucky break, right? So how many times in my life and your life too, at some point, will you have a couple of relationships that ended disastrously, but what turned out later to be such a virtuous lesson learned, and such a lucky break to have happened when it happened, and what you learned from that. And then realizing, if you really love someone, you got to let them go type deal, where it's you just got to let people be people, and they're going to do what they want to do, and they're going to make the reasons they make for it. The sense of being wronged is a simple awareness problem. And he talks about this yesterday, seeing things as the person at fault does. Because, just because like the lady in the minivan cut you off and now she's speeding away, swerving in and out of traffic, doesn't mean that she's just late for work and it's her fault and she's a bad person. She might have a choking child in the back seat. Now, it's a little bit different when it's like a work van or a work truck or somebody who obviously is late for work acting like that. But at the same time, it is how you choose to receive it. And if you just try to receive it, even if wrong, like we just learned from Seeking Wisdom, that little white lie to yourself, because if you're going to invert the thinking from Seeking Wisdom, which like Charlie Munger talks about doing all the time, if you're going to invert that thinking and like seek the aversion, like and try not to have the losses, but you're so tied into your emotions, at least take that and all of these things that he's pointing out and know that the little white lies that you tell yourself in order for you to not take things personally can be like super huge and super progressive for you personally, professionally, and all around, because nobody has time to be offended. We're all busy. It's an awareness problem. We need to remember that all things are guided by reason, but that it is a vast and universal reason that we cannot always see. All things, right, come to level out over the long term. We are spreading out, so everything comes to that equilibrium, as it were. That is the surprise. That the surprise hurricane was the result of a butterfly flapping its wings in a hemisphere away, or that the misfortune we have experienced is simply the prelude to a pleasant and enviable future. So, is it just like a temporary misfortune and hardship that we have to endure for a better future? Or was it really some cosmic happenstance centuries ago, that, led to this moment right now, and it's such a minute chance, 0.00000 to like the negative whatever powers percent, that this moment right now is happening? That's not what it is. It's not the butterfly that flapped its wings. It's the, what are you doing here and now? Are you continuing to do daily the things that you know that you need to be doing, or are you letting all of those moments pass? And again, that is what being a general is all about.